Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Paul Ramsey, the Dean of the School of Medicine, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the dedication of the William H. Foege Building. This is a great day for the School of Medicine, for the College of Engineering, and for our entire university. Dedication of the Foege Building is a milestone in our history. This laboratory building and teaching facility opens up new horizons for interdisciplinary research and educational programs. I am delighted, truly delighted, that we are also here today to honor Dr. William H. Foege. Dr. Foege is an epidemiologist who is widely recognized as a leader in the successful campaign to eradicate smallpox in the 1970s. He served as a medical missionary in Nigeria and was appointed director of the CDC, the Center for Diseases Control, in 1977. I need to mention one other important fact. He is a 1961 graduate of the UW School of Medicine, the same time that University Hospital was founded. It is a distinct honor for us to have President Jimmy Carter with us today as our featured speaker. President Carter has a long-standing relationship with Bill Foege and values the many contributions he has made to global health. We are fortunate that members of the Carter family are here along with many members of the Foege family. I'd like to ask the Carter family and the Foege family to please stand. Before we begin our program, I would like to acknowledge a number of individuals for their important contributions to our university and to the establishment of this wonderful facility. We have 7, I believe, UW Regents here today: Bill Gates Sr., Craig Cole, Shelley Yap, Herb Simon, Connie Proctor, Fred Kiga, and William Rasmussen. We have 2 former UW presidents here today and their wives, William Gerberding and his wife Ruth, Lee Huntsman and his wife Jenny. We have 3 current members of the UW Medicine Board, the chair of the board, Ann Ramsey Jenkins, and members Brooks Reagan and Joanne Terracani, and a former member of the board, Sylvia Matthews. We have representatives here today from Senator Maria Cantwell's office, Jim McDermott's office, Adam Smith's office, Congressman Norm Dick's office, and Governor Gregoire's office. We also have former Secretary of State Ralph Monroe here with us today. So, very fortunate to have here today leadership of a number of foundations that made this building possible. The leadership of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates Sr. and Patty Stonecipher are with us. We have the leadership of the Whitaker Foundation, Peter Katona, and leadership from Washington Research Foundation, the John C. and Carol Hughes Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and the Casey Foundation. David Oth is with us today also, who made an important early gift to make this building possible. Here today are the architects, the co-architects who designed the building, and Hoffman Construction. Unfortunately, both Senator Patty Murray and Congressman Norm Dicks are unable to be with us today. Senator Murray and Congressman Dicks were influential in securing federal funding for the Foege Building. About 3 years ago, actually in August of 2003, I had the privilege of standing on this site under a tent at the time we took a shovel of dirt to begin construction on this building. The tent was there that day because of the sunshine. Now, I have the privilege of standing here today with this building being completed on budget and nearly on time. And I'd like to conclude acknowledgments by acknowledging the more than 1,000 individuals, many of whom are represented here today, who are responsible for the design, the construction, and then for the work that will be conducted in this building. the architects, the contractors, the construction workers, the staff, the faculty, the literally thousands of individuals who are contributing their work to improving global health. Like many other endeavors at our university, this building represents a partnership. Advancements in global health will depend on interdisciplinary work. The Department of Bioengineering, that will occupy approximately 1/2 of the Foege Building, is a great example of interdisciplinary work. The Department of Bioengineering is a partnership between the School of Medicine and the College of Engineering. And that leads me to introduce my colleague, the acting dean of the College of Engineering, Dr. Manny Soma. Manny came to the UW over 23 years ago. He is a professor of electrical engineering and also served as engineering's associate dean for organizational infrastructure. He assumed the role of acting dean last February. Both Dean Soma and former Dean Denise Denton championed this building project and value the opportunities that it makes available for our students, for our faculty, and ultimately to improve global health. Dr. Soma.
Thank you. Let me join Dean Ramsey and all of you today to celebrate this great day for the University of Washington. One of the greatest things to be at the university here, and we have done many great things, is the collaboration between the School of Medicine and the College of Engineering within the last 30 years or even longer. I strongly believe that the best advances and the best work that we are doing is because of the result of the collaboration between medicine and engineering. In fact, you may be very surprised to know that the types of engineering we are doing these days is not your father's engineering. It's very new, and it needs a building like the one that you see here to be able to get the work done. I just want to take one moment to acknowledge Professor Lee Huntsman. Prior to serving as a provost and the president of the UW, Lee spent many years as the chair of the Department of Bioengineering. He has a real vision and dream of involving engineering and medicine, and the result we are seeing now, these two great new buildings, are the result of his vision and dream. And I would like to thank you, Lee, for making it happen. And now it's my Mark Emmert, the president of the University of Washington, to share some talk with you this afternoon.
Thank you. Well, let me, on behalf of the entire university community, welcome you to this wonderful ceremony. This tent has standing room only in the wings in the rain and surrounded around the windows here on such a blustery day, I think is clear testimony to how exciting this project is and what it means for the life of the UW. That we're able to bring to this celebration three such extraordinary individuals as we have on stage with us today tells you how important this project is, not just to the University of Washington, but to the development of healthcare and bioengineering and global health across the nation and indeed around the world. For us, this isn't just the celebration of a building, as glorious and wonderful as the building is. It's a celebration of what will go on in that building and what our faculty and students have been doing for many years to bring us to this day. It is quite a remarkable accomplishment to bring together people from all different agencies and all different foundations and all different parts of the institution to fund this kind of project, to deliver it nearly on time and on budget, to do that with all those different individuals engaged in it, and to have all of you show up here today is just wonderful. So thank you all for being here. This building, of course, is a wonderful exemplar of what the UW is all about. It's an example of what the university can do in terms of interdisciplinary collaboration, in terms of focusing its great intellectual resources on problems that really matter to the world around us. It's an exemplar of this university's willingness to step up to the table and take on the biggest, most interesting, most exciting challenges scientifically, intellectually, and globally that we possibly can do. For me as the president, I know I join President Huntsman and President Gerberding in the great pride that we have in all that you accomplish. So thank you very much for all the hard work that brought us here today. We're delighted that you're with us. And finally, it's my great pleasure to introduce the first of our guests to speak. The University of Washington and the Gates Foundation is so intrinsically bound together, it's a little hard to tell what all of those relationships mean, and it'll take historians to figure it all out. From Bill and Mary's great role in this university, the great service they provided as regents and supporters and activists at the campus from their student days forward, to the support of Bill and Melinda and the foundation to all of the projects they've supported here at the UW. We simply don't have enough thanks to give to the Gates Foundation. And if the Gates family and the Gates Foundation did nothing more than help the UW, that would be just fine, Bill. But of course, what we also are delighted to acknowledge is Bill and Melinda's extraordinary commitment to global health and all the other causes of the Gates Foundation. And it is probably easily the case, President Carter just said so in a press conference a moment ago, that no foundation and no family has done more for more people than the Gates Foundation already has in its incredibly short life. We are looking forward to amazing things coming from you, Bill and Melinda, and your foundation, and we are absolutely delighted that you're here with us today. I give you Bill Gates.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here today. I'm glad they put a tent up for us. I've been looking forward to this occasion for quite some time for a number of reasons. Having this bill to work and make new discoveries is a very important thing, and I'm glad that our foundation is one of the backers of this project. But it's also a special occasion to acknowledge some people who've really made a difference in world health. It's great to be here, and it's my honor to be introducing President Carter. Both President Carter and Bill Foege are people who've had a huge impact on my commitment to world health and everything our foundation has done. They've led by example. They've spoken about the cause in a more inspiring way than I think almost anyone else in the field. And they've stepped forward to help educate us as we've gone down the path of figuring out what can be done to advance these causes. Bill Foege has so many contributions he's made, going back to his pioneering work on smallpox, his success in promoting childhood immunization, his leadership at the CDC and later at the Carter Center, and then the help he's provided us. My wife, Melinda, wishes she was here today, but in fact, she's off in Zambia learning about malaria, and this is malaria season right now, so it's a great time to be over there and learn about what the new interventions are able to do, but she wishes she could be here as well. As we turn to Bill Foege, early in the history of our foundation, we were amazed at what we were seeing, and Bill shared with us the books he thought we should read, and we're avid readers, so that was a great way to get us to come up to speed and see those things. And then we listened to him and looked at the speeches he'd given to understand what a central cause this is. You know, it's simply a fact that millions and millions of children die who should not, and that science, by setting the right priorities, and governments by setting the right priorities, and people who put their time into it can really make that change, and we're beginning to see some impact in that and Bill has been at the center of it. Of course, Bill hasn't just been the teacher to Melinda and myself. I'd say that in and out of the classroom, he's really trained a generation of public health students and gotten them to focus on these very central problems. At our foundation, he's been a mentor for the entire global health team. And the lessons they've learned from him have really made a big difference in all the work that they do. On so many issues, from the importance of disease prevention to the details of how to get partnerships right, which is very complex in the world of global health, Bill has pointed the way. And so our program wouldn't be anything like what it is without his guidance. As I mentioned, Bill once headed the Carter Center, and President Carter is one of his heroes. And so I know it gives Bill a great pleasure to have President Carter come out here today, and it also gives me great pleasure to have him here and to be able to introduce him. He's led in many different ways. The Carter Center in particular is a phenomenal institution that was there tackling the problems of world health even before we came along. Guinea worm, river blindness, trachoma, many other conditions which get almost no attention here in the United States have a devastating impact, and all of those are areas where the Carter Center's had a huge impact. They've had an all-out war on guinea worm, and that disease will be eradicated, and when that time comes, President Carter will deserve much of the credit. His leadership in bringing attention to those issues, really no one else has done it, and it's a phenomenal thing. Back in 2002, my dad and President Carter, as well as Mrs. Carter, went on a mission to Africa, and the idea was to raise the visibility, shine a light on the suffering of HIV/AIDS, and talking about what needs to be done to stop it. And my dad still brings up how amazed he was at President Carter's ability to command attention through the power of his moral vision. He insisted that if people really understood the devastation of AIDS, they would do more to help. And he wasn't speaking as a politician. He was speaking as a human being, and he's an incredible human being. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce President Jimmy Carter.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me thank Bill Gates for that introduction and for the pleasure and honor of coming back here to the University of Washington. Since I left the White House, I don't make many speeches, but remarkably, this is my fourth time to come and make what I consider to be major addresses. The first time was to inaugurate the lecture series for Scoop Jackson and the International Institute of Studies. I was the one who nominated Scoop Jackson for president in 1972 in Miami, and I was the one that beat Scoop Jackson for president for the nomination in 1976. Later, I came back to help to honor my good friend Dan Evans, who's one of the great governors of all times at the School of Public Affairs. And then a short time ago, I came back to the School of Law to dedicate the William Gates Hall. Well, this is therefore a great kind of homecoming for me. And I'm very overwhelmed at what has been done here at the School of Medicine and at the center. The School of Medicine, by the way, has been in the 10 top schools in the whole nation. But I think more significantly, particularly to Bill Foege, is that he's one of your most distinguished graduates, and I think one of the most peripatetic or widely traveled graduates that you've ever had. It's also consistently number one in primary health care, family practice, and rural medicine. And that is especially important to us. Bill Foege has a remarkable background, and my role is to tell you things that you don't know about him, because some of you may not even know him at all. First of all, Bill is one of the experts on a science called arachnology. How many of you know what arachnology is? One knows. Well, for the peanut farmers in the crowd, that's the study of spiders. And you wouldn't know it, but this man sitting behind me is one of the world's expert on the minutiae about spiders. Just ask him later. He can tell you what's the largest and smallest spider in the world. He can tell you what one goes deepest in the ground and what goes highest in the air. He can tell you when you walk through the woods how horizontal spider webs get wrapped around your face. And he can even tell you how many times the word spider is used in the King James Version of the Bible. So you can see what an expert he is on this. He's also one of the few people in the world that's ever succeeded in immunizing people because he was tall. As a matter of fact, when he was in Biafra during the war there, that's in the eastern part of Nigeria, as you know, he was trying to immunize people in the most remote areas of that country. And of course, it's hard to communicate. But he went to a village where the chief was there, and he said, look, we can communicate by drums. He's also an expert on drum communication. And Bill said, well, you know, how do you get them to come to some place as unpleasant as to get their arm penetrated by a needle? And the chief said, you just leave it up to me. So they started beating the drums, and people came from and assembled in the village. And they were madly immunizing the people. And Bill said, how in the world did you get them to come here? And the chief said, I told everybody to come to my village and see the tallest man in the world. So you can see how diverse his talent, so I can spend all afternoon talking about some of those other things. Well, to be more serious, for many people, maybe for all of us, there are a few others who have literally changed our minds and changed our lives. Except for my father, two men have helped to shape who I am. One of them was Admiral Hyman Rickover, for whom I worked in developing the peaceful use of nuclear power. And the other one was Bill Foege. Much more significantly than changing my life, he's changed the lives of millions of other people around the world who will never suffer from smallpox, who will never go blind with onchocerciasis or river blindness. Millions of children who will never die from dehydration because of diarrhea. Thousands of newborn babies who will not die in Pakistan because he taught the mothers not to cover their umbilical cord with buffalo fat or ghee. Those are the kinds of practical contributions that he has made to untold millions of people in many nations on earth. This building houses, as you know, cutting-edge research, including the most advanced genome sciences and biochemical engineering, an all too rare occurrence in the theoretical and practical approach, bringing them together for the reduction of human suffering. Because quite often they're separate disciplines, and it's very difficult to get them to come together in a cooperative way. What has been done here typifies the life of Bill Foege. He orchestrated the first major conference in the world for me after leaving the White House. It was called Closing the Gap. And he showed an ability to take complex issues and make them simple enough to understand. The Closing the Gap conference comprised about 120 experts. There were more than a dozen Nobel laureates. To explore the gap between what we know how to do and what we do. Because all too often we fail to use this knowledge. It applies in the rich world, as Bill Foege pointed out so vividly, with unnecessary deaths and suffering among ourselves from heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and violence, caused by obvious things like smoking cigarettes, the lack of exercise, improper diet, unsafe sex, and improper use of weapons. And in the third world, to address the diseases that are no longer exist at all among us, which is proof in itself that these diseases can be eradicated or eliminated or prevented. Bill Foege has a remarkable ability to look at the heart of a problem, to simplify difficult issues, and to develop sound priorities that in the past had escaped the capabilities even of experts. It's amazing to see him get in a conference and have all kinds of diverse opinions rendered, and then at the conclusion of it say, this is what really applies. This is the information we really need. This is what we can do to solve this program. Without his knowing, Foege has been nominated, I don't know if it's appropriate to reveal this, more than once for the Nobel Peace Prize, with a citation emphasizing just 3 of his many accomplishments. First, as a medical missionary, exactly 40 years ago, in East Nigeria during the Biafran War, he developed a unique system of concentrating vaccination just on endemic areas that had smallpox, so that complete eradication of this disease could possibly be achieved while immunizing only about half of the population. Later, as director of the Global Smallpox Eradication Program at Centers for Disease Control, he applied this unprecedented technique to broad areas, including the entire nation of India, the most endemic country. Within just 2 years, listen to this, from 1973 to 1975, the number of cases of smallpox in India was reduced from 85,000 to 0. Typically, Bill Foege found ways not to take credit, but to let the health workers and others in India have full credit for the achievement. As a result of that apparent miracle, the World Health Organization was finally convinced to target the disease for total eradication, a goal that was achieved in 1979. Still, this is the only disease completely to have been eradicated from the face of the earth. Second, with this success, WHO determined to increase childhood immunization from a prevailing 20% of the world's children to 80%, a seemingly impossible goal. They needed teamwork, which had never existed among competitors. I wouldn't say antagonists, but competitors. United Nations Development Program, the World Bank, UNICEF, WHO, and many private organizations. They had never been willing or able to work together. The group turned, you can guess, to Bill Foege, who organized and led the Task Force for Child Survival. The resulting success was commemorated in 1990 at a major ceremony at the United Nations. Again, Bill Foege gave others credit. In his comments about Foege, Jim Grant, the remarkable head of UNICEF, said, and I quote, "This was the largest peacetime mobilization in the history of the earth." Well, Bill Foege is the best coalition builder I have ever seen in action. And a third item, in 1987, Merck & Company found that their veterinary medicine, called HeartGuard, or ivermectin, or they call it Mectizan, could protect humans from river blindness, in addition to preventing puppy dogs from having heartworms. This time, Foege was able to overcome the historic competition between public health and the pharmaceutical industry. Eventually, Merck agreed to supply free Mectizan to every single endemic village on Earth. Although the macrophilaria, or the large worms, still exist, in the body. The microfilaria that cause blindness are eliminated. And people who take 1 or so tablets of mectizan per year will never go blind. More than 250 million treatments have been administered since 1987. And the program currently reaches more than 45 million people in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East every year. And the program has now been expanded also to treat lymphatic filariasis, which, as you know, is known as elephantiasis. Other major pharmaceutical companies have seen what Bill Foege did with Merck and Company, and they have emulated, along with other corporations, this grandiose commitment to benevolence and generosity. Note those two words, benevolence and generosity. Bottom line corporations and pharmaceutical companies in our country. And they are so proud of what they have been able to do in that way. Foege also organized the first international task force for disease eradication, bringing together representatives from almost 24 organizations to analyze, and see how simple this is, to analyze every human illness, to see which ones might theoretically be completely eradicated from the face of the earth or from certain regions. And from this effort, 2 diseases have now been targeted, polio and dracunculiasis, or guinea worm. Thanks largely to Bill Foege, the world is on the verge of success. There's been a reduction in guinea worm of 99.7%, and we're on the verge of seeing it eliminated entirely. During my first year as president, Bill Foege became the director of the Centers for Disease Control, and he served until 1983. He greatly expanded the agency's focus from infectious diseases almost exclusively to include chronic disease prevention, injury and violence prevention, and environmental health. Subsequently, he was promoted to become executive director of the Carter Center, where he served for 7 years. And then he reached the epitome of success when he was graduated to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help guide their global health strategy in its earliest stages. And still, by the way, in his spare time, Bill Foege has also continued to play leading roles, not just a role. Listen to this list. The World Health Organization, the American Public Health Association, he was president, the National Academy of Sciences and Institute of Medicine, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Margaret Casey Foundation, in addition, obviously, to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Throughout his life, as a medical missionary, a global health worker, director of major organizations, or advisor to those striving to change the world, Bill Foege has motivated those around him to join him in reaching for greatness, but always with a self-effacing dollop of modesty. Bill Foege has focused the world on the concept of, quote, global health equity that has led to extraordinary contributions, not only in health, but also in economic development and in bringing peace to people in nations with conflicts. In closing, let me explain this phrase, global health equity, by quoting from a speech that Bill made to the World Health Assembly in 2000. But first, he tried to tell the audience that all of them needed to be involved and to think. And he used a description of a kindergarten child whose teacher told the class on the first day, if you need to go to the bathroom, raise your hand. And the child said, but how does that help? More seriously, this is what Bill stated. The world cannot be allowed to exist half healthy and half sick. There's a point in every movement where a line is crossed. There's a drop of water that finally causes a glass to overflow. A moment when a friendship becomes permanent. And a moment when a vaccine actually provides protection. There will be a moment in the future when the phrase, "the world cannot be allowed to exist half healthy and half sick," goes from being a nice statement to an actual commitment, where there is no turning back, and the world, Bill said, dares to think of the health of the whole human race as a practical objective. This is a challenge with which he still confronts every one of us. I am very proud to have Bill Foege as my mentor and as my friend.
And it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. William H. Foege.
Thank you. The wonderful words of President Carter both move me and increase my apprehension. For what language is adequate to express gratitude? My parents raised 6 children. All of them are here today. They did their best, I'm sure, but they absolutely failed to prepare me for today. The closest advice was when my mother once told me, if you're ever confronted by a person or a group of people that leave you in such awe.
High winds momentarily interrupted the event, and people moved to a small auditorium inside the new building. Camera crews followed as Dr. Foege resumed his speech.
First, my gratitude to the Gates family, to Melinda, to Bill Sr., to Patty. Gratitude for how they've changed for all time what is going to happen in global health. In the last century, it's clear that so many groups of people and government agencies and non-government organizations, individuals, have made a dent, but we've never passed the tipping point. And now in the last 6 years, with a new interest in global health research, global health delivery, one can see the things that President Carter talked about are now foreseeable, that we could see a time of global health equity where it becomes the social norm. And I'm grateful for the vision that not only worries about how to get vaccine into a child in Africa, but is not diverted by the tyranny of the acute from changing the future. By strengthening genomics and bioengineering, the last 6 years has been a continuous lesson to me on what can happen when you make science the servant of humanity. And what can happen when one family actually makes this sort of commitment. One family that gives the lie to the old excuse, I tried to change the world, but I was outnumbered. We're raised to think that it's better to give than to receive. But we know deep down that the social contract says if you give, you are going to get back. So we think we're going to be paid back. And indeed, one of the first clear references that I can find to the Golden Rule is when Confucius was asked by a student, could you tell us in one word how best to live? And Confucius said, is not reciprocity that word? So that's how we're taught. But a friend, Tom Droege, while living through what he believed to be his final months of life, had the discipline to write a book of what it is like at the end to receive and know you can never pay back. And he concludes that in the end, you have to break a lifelong habit of reciprocity and with gratitude accept the fact that some gifts are simply too big to be paid back. And that the biggest gifts, such as life itself and children and grandchildren, are totally undeserved. And this gift is in that category, too big to ever pay back. It's like a kidney donation and you ask, why would someone do that? And since I can never pay back the gift of having my name associated with these buildings, I now simply say to the Gates family, sincere thanks. To quote Saul Bellows, the child in me is delighted, the adult is skeptical. The human side of me is bewildered, but still pleased. And I now understand the philosopher who once said, he who says he hates every kind of flattery and says it in earnest certainly does not yet know every kind of flattery. As an aside, it doesn't escape my attention that the scientific creativity these buildings will encourage is bound to be matched by a creativity in the pronunciation of the building. My gratitude next to President and Mrs. Carter, who continue to teach that most valuable lesson, let your life be your argument. They've changed for all time what this country will expect of its first family on departure from the White House. But it's not just this country. They have convinced 2 former heads of state in Africa to work in health. They've defined for us how the purpose of life truly is, a life of purpose. And like the Gates family, they've demonstrated an insatiable appetite for learning, experiences, and life, and they've translated that capacity to drink deeply of life to the belief that everyone should enjoy those gifts, starting with the most basic gift of health. I'm absolutely humbled that President Carter would come and give this keynote speech. Thank you. You can tell the character of people by the way they treat those who can do nothing for them, and I can do nothing for the Carters or the Gates. My gratitude also to the University of Washington. I came to the medical school 50 years ago for an interview. My first interview was with a faculty member who asked this very nervous applicant, why do you want to go to medical school? And within my first few words, he interrupted me to tell me why I should want to go to medical school. And it was never clear to me whether he did this because he was more nervous than I was or whether he was a surgeon. But his answer was so much better than the one I intended that I used it with every subsequent interview. And it worked. I was learning early to stay in the slipstream of the very best. I watched this remarkable institution grow, and we missed today one of my teachers, Russ Alexander, who had wanted to be here and he died last week, a real loss to public health. We do have here today Ray Ravenholt, who was not only a teacher, but I worked for him at the Seattle-King County Health Department after school and on Saturdays, and he quite deliberately converted me to the joys of global health. These and other teachers helped create the excellence of this place, and I will never forget David Rutstein, the late David Rutstein from Harvard, saying to me after a sabbatical here, he said, I can never say this in Boston, but this is a better medical school than Harvard Medical. gratitude goes to faculty, mentors, family, as well as parents and a wife who approach sainthood. And thanks to my surgeon, Paul Lang, for agreeing to keep me alive until he retired, and I wish him a very, very long career. In addition to my inexpressible gratitude, allow me to say two other things. What's the challenge for these buildings? And second, a word from people who went before. The challenge, the gift is more than buildings. It's a gift from the Gates family for scientists to use their imagination, to harness intellect and art and passion, to explore what has never been seen before, thought about before, available before. This is the challenge. It will require a building of learners. Eric Hoffer said it's the learners who inherit the future. In 1872, Stephen Smith, at the age of 49, helped to start the American Public Health Association. For the 50th anniversary, they invited him back to speak. At age 99, he walked to the lectern and he spoke on the future of public health. The buildings, the equipment, the budget here are on loan to you and to others as the seeds for the future of global health. For me, it was worth the 70-year journey to see this moment, and I wouldn't at all mind to be invited back on the 30th anniversary to talk about the future of global health. Now fast forward 100 years, and 100 years from today, there will be a centennial celebration, and there will be a speaker talking about the history of global health, the history of these buildings. And the speaker will talk about the auspicious start with President Carter sending us forth to change the world. And the speaker will talk to the Gates children, and I mean the Gates children because they have a good chance of living to be over 100, and your grandchildren. And incidentally, I hope that my 3 grandchildren who are here, Max and Ella and Olga, will also attend. But the speaker will rejoice that they insisted that medical knowledge is not a gift to be hoarded, but to be shared. And the speaker will recount the origins of this grand adventure to marry basic science to the liberation of global health. So ultimately, the gift is not even for those working here. It's a gift given to the people of the world. It's a gift that ripples for as long as we will have a civilization. It will encourage new interactions of bioengineering and genomics. And I mentioned at the press conference, just as antibodies are actually biological nanorobots, I can see a day when we will inject nanorobots to be both curative and preventive. But the most wonderful thing of all is the idea of social DNA, the sum total of the changes in future society that will come because of these buildings. Indeed, when I see the potential in this small footprint of land, in this exquisite corner of the world, and I think about software payments, software revenue, coming from every part of the world, flowing to Microsoft, allowing the accumulation of capital, and that capital leading to the construction of these buildings, leading to knowledge and skills and tools that flow back to every place that contributed to software, then I recognize the wisdom of Will Durant's statement that money is the root of all civilization. And finally, a word about people who went before. If Polybius was correct that the world must be seen as an organic whole where everything affects everything, then in a very real sense, we hear the voices of 100 billion people who preceded us speaking right now as we launch these buildings. It strikes me that some wrote their speeches in advance so we don't even have to guess at what. Many were classified as philosophers or theologians, but they were actually scientists. The almost unbearable perfection of Confucius would emphasize morality and the golden rule in using these buildings for the good of all. Amos the prophet would introduce the need for a social conscience in these buildings. Imhotep, apparently the first scientist that we actually know by name, a physician and the builder of the step pyramid, would still urge us to combine art and science in every endeavor and in every scientist. Lucretius, over 2,000 years ago, is classified as a poet, but listen to what he says. Matter is not created or destroyed. All things that grow decay, organs, organisms, families, states, races, planets, stars, only the atoms never die. 2,000 years ago, he said that. 9 centuries ago, Averroes, the great Islamic philosopher, lawyer, and physician, who saved for us the works of Aristotle, and the first to recognize that an attack of smallpox actually provided immunity, he would urge integration of the knowledge that comes from these buildings into everything, as he did while writing about medicine, philosophy, physics, psychology, law, theology, and astronomy. And then 100 years later, Arnold of Villanova, who was physician to James II, went on diplomatic missions, and he was shocked by the disease, misery, and exploitation of the poor. He did not mince words. He condemned the wealth of the clergy, was pursued by the Inquisition, and still he was so sure of his positions that he repeatedly warned the king. He said to him, unless you protect the poor from the rich, you're going to go to hell. And today he would give a sermon. Roger Bacon would probably enjoy this day as much as anyone. And he would say he saw it coming 700 years ago. He seems to have seen everything: cars, airplanes, submarines, telescopes. But his warning is still clear 700 years later. Science has no moral compass. So scientists must cultivate one. Rabelais, born 300 years after Roger Bacon, would repeat the 10 words that he has Gargantua saying to his son: science without conscience is but the ruin of the soul. And then Francis Bacon, he would start with his legendary words, knowledge itself is power, and then he would add, of all the virtues and dignities of the mind, goodness is the greatest. Benjamin Franklin would be absolutely delighted by the science coming out of these buildings. And then he would end up as the others, oh, that moral science were in as fair a way of improvement, and that human beings would at length learn what they now improperly call humanity. Albert Schweitzer reminds us that ethics goes beyond people to include animals, plants, the environment, and he would caution all those with power, which means everyone who will ever work in these buildings, to be mindful of the destiny that they are creating for others. Einstein practiced his speech for today in front of the Caltech student body 75 years ago last month. It is not enough that you should understand science. Concern for people themselves and their fate must always form the chief interest of all technical endeavors, in order that the creations of our mind should be a blessing and not a curse. And finally, Richard Feynman, guest lecturer at this university in 1963, became interested in nanotechnology, genomics, and prevention. He said that time moves in one direction only, and that it takes very little energy to scramble an egg. But he said all of science is incapable of reversing that simple process. Therefore, he would urge us to use the science in these buildings for prevention. And so the summary of these greats of the past is to say repeatedly that there's something better than science, and that is science with a moral compass. Science in the service of humanity, science that makes current deeds responsive to future needs. In 1932, Lincoln Steffens said, "What is true of business and politics is gloriously true of the professions, the arts and crafts, the sciences. The best picture has not yet been painted. The greatest poem is still unsung, and the mightiest novel remains to be written." And so this place will redefine creativity and discovery and service with morality. This will be a place of inspiration, combining the talents of the scientific elite with the vision of Melinda and Bill Gates. It will be, in the words of the poet, a love letter to the children of the future saying, we loved you even when we knew we would never meet you. Thanks to the Gates family for letting me be part of it.
We have moved the ribbon-cutting ceremony inside. And I'll ask Bill Foege to join Youngman Kim, the chair of the Department of Bioengineering, and Bob Waterston, the chair of the Department of Genome Sciences, to open the Foege Building.